Hello world, this is Jeffrey, JJB146 Blake for Hoopa Hideout, and today I'm coming to you with a look at Robin Schulz 60 card Drago list. So it's exact 60. I spent a heck of a lot of time studying it frame by frame to get every single card when he played it on round 1 stream at Worlds. This is the list he played, and it's the list that I played when I won my League Cup. So that's awesome. I've also got some more cards over here that I'd actually put in the list now. Things that I'll tell you about, things that I take out, and that sort of thing. We'll get to that. We'll play a practice hand. And yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and dig in. And we'll start off just looking at the Pokemon. So we play four copies of Regidrago V with 3 Regidrago VSTAR. You've probably seen lists now that are playing 3 Regidrago V. I think that's fine. But with 4, you're going to be a little bit more frequent about starting Regidrago V, and that's optimal most of the time. So we also have 3 copies of Teal Mask Ogerpon with the Teal Dance ability that lets you attach a basic grass energy to him, not counting as your attachment for turn, which also will then draw you a card. So this guy gives you consistency boost, he gives you energy acceleration every turn. Definitely a powerful card in the deck, and one of the reasons that Regidrago has come from out of nowhere to be one of the strongest decks in the game was the release of Ogerpon in Twilight Masquerade. So we do have to get the energy from Teal Mask onto Regidrago, and we'll get into how we do that later, but basically it's energy switches, a lot of energy switches. Then we play one more attacker, Radiant Charizard. Radiant Charizard is great attacking into the mirror. He's great attacking into many of the matchups that otherwise could cause you some problems. He can take out or finish off attacks into Lugia. If there's not mist energy involved, you can either clean up or have some damage down with some of your spreading attacks. Into Raging Bolt, Radiant Charizard is your ideal attacker because he's a single prize Thidokos. Then we'll get into the rest of the Pokemon that are just support. Right, so we have Squawkabilly EX there to draw extra cards on the first turn of the game. I would say it's about 50-50 as to whether we use Squawkabilly in any given game. We play Mew EX, and there's probably a 60 to 70% chance that you want to have Mew EX out to be drawing cards with him. Then we play a Pheasantipity EX, and there's probably a 75% chance you're going to want Pheasantipity at some point. Then we have, in this list, Lumineon V. And Lumineon is a very unique inclusion. I don't think I've seen any lists with Lumineon in there. It was very useful at the Cup, but at the same time, I don't know that I got as much value as I could have with some other cards. So I think I'd probably go back to the way I was playing the list and actually have this spot be an Iron Leaves EX, because that solves some difficult situations you can get into, specifically against Snorlax. But also it can lead you an easy way to power up additional attackers, or even to get things set up and concentrated to be able to change Thornton into a new Regidrago V and evolve to be a V-Star. And then we're going to get into the Pokemon that Regidrago gets his power from. So Regidrago, for those of you who aren't familiar, his only attack is Apex Dragon. You can see it there. But what it does is it lets him use any attack from any dragon Pokemon that is in your discard. It doesn't have to be a basic. It can be a single prize or an EX. If we were still in like VMAX and Tag Team era, it could have been one of those. So there was a point in time when older forms of Regidrago copied Duraludon VMAX's attack, but we're not there anymore. So we have Dragapult EX in here to use the Phantom Dive attack, hit for 200 and spread 6 damage counters. That's easier to accomplish faster with Regidrago than with any of the builds of Dragapult EX. Then we have Kyurem for the ultimate spread attack. Kyurem will spread 110 damage to 3 different Pokemon. You have to discard the energy after doing so. But with Teal Mask and with energy switches and being able to use the Legacy Star V-Star power or ability on Regidrago V-Star, we can get cards from the discard back to reuse them to power up Regidragos multiple times. Then we've got Hisuian Goodra V-Star with a rolling iron attack that hits for 200 and reduces the damage to your Regidrago by 80 on the next turn. So that's a powerful attack to copy as well, just because it's a solid hit that makes it very unlikely that you will get knocked out in return. Then we have Raging Bolt EX. And this card I'd actually replace as well. I would rather be running a Giratina VSTAR for the big hits. Giratina VSTAR hits up to hits for 280, which can knock out most of the stuff in format. And the stuff it doesn't knock out in format, we either have other ways to knock out, or we can prep damage for, or just kind of ignore and attack other threats instead. And then those are our Pokemon. Next we get into our supporters. So I'll start off with the most prolific supporter for the deck, Professor's Research. We play 4 copies of Professor's Research because we want to see it early and we want to see it often. It draws us 7 new cards. It can be an outlet for getting the attacking Pokemon into the discard so that Regidrago can copy their attacks. And it can, like I say, 7 cards is a lot. It lets you go through and have a better chance of finding all the pieces you need to get the energies on Ogerpon and then switch them onto the Drago. We also play 2 copies of Iono. Every once in a while you'll have a hand that you don't want to discard your cards from. Maybe it's full of energy switches and you don't have enough energy in play yet. So we can Iono in those times in the early game, and then Iono is great for any matchups that tend to give Regidrago trouble. It's great to disrupt the late game, which often is enough to let the consistency and power of Regidrago come back and overcome them. So then we also have 2 copies of Boss's Orders to, of course, target down the right Pokemon we want. So that maybe we lay some damage counters down with Phantom Dive, and then we bring up one of the damaged targets and knock them out while finishing off the Pokemon that we hit for 200. Plays like that are common, of course, but there's a lot of other interesting plays you can make. During the Cup, I managed to knock out in a mirror match my opponent's Regidrago VSTAR with a Teal Mask Ogerpon in a weird situation where that was the only way I could knock it out, because he was knocking out my only developed Regidrago and I didn't have enough resources ready to build up a new one. But that was his only attacker in play as well. And then I was sitting there with an Ogerpon that could just kind of OHKO everything. So it worked out well there. There have been times when I've used Mew to copy my opponent's attacks, including sometimes an opposing Regidrago, to then do all of any of my Dragon Pokemon attacks using Mew. There have also been plenty of times that, like I say, we've ended up wanting to use Radiant Charizard. There have been times where using Squawk abilities Motivate, more than in like any other deck I've played, Motivate can be a very powerful tool for powering up your attackers in the early game as well as the late game. And then of course, the copying attacks of Phantom Dive and Trifrost on the Kyurem and Rolling Iron are huge. Serendipity Snipe for 100 has even been useful at a time or two. But yeah, continuing with the list, we have 4 Ultra Balls, we have 4 Nest Balls. Of course, these cards are purely to get out the Pokemon that we need when we need them, and I would say these counts are all but written in stone. I tried to go down to 3 Nest Ball to fit more stuff in, and it was okay, but not as good, not as reliable and consistent as the deck can be and should be. We also play 4 copies of Earthen Vessel, so that we have a good way to get to our energy when we want it, when we need it, because we need energy and we need lots of it almost every turn. And then we have 4 copies of Energy Switch. Again, this is how we move the energy from Teal Mask to wherever else we want it to go. That's often Regidrago, but sometimes there's a different target. I would say these 16 cards are kind of a must for the list, so don't change them up. Now next, we have Superior Energy Retrieval. Superior Energy Retrieval is mandatory if you're attacking with Raging Bolt. It's less mandatory if you're using Giratina. And that's because we can use Super Rod to get energy back, but also get Pokemon back. So we can reuse Radiant Charizard, which makes them even more powerful. We can reuse Mew if our opponent knocks out Mew for some reason. We can get back a Regidrago VSTAR that we had to discard early on for whatever reason. So I think Superior Energy Retrieval is great if you're using Raging Bolt. The discard concepts that it brings with it are very helpful as an extra card to just discard a Pokemon attacker with. But I prefer Super Rod if you're using Giratina here. Then we have a set of 1-0s. 1 Canceling Cologne. Originally, people were including this in Drago just so that they could use Kyurem's attack, even if our opponent had Manaphy in play. But with Iron Thorns going crazy, and in the Cup, I faced 3 rounds of Snorlax. So Canceling Culling was huge there. You know, they have their retreat block, but they also have Mimikyu there to prevent basically any of our attackers, and Cornerstone Ogerpon to also prevent any of our attackers. Little hint though, if you're facing a Cornerstone Ogerpon, just use a Regidrago V and don't evolve it, because then you're 2-hit KOing and damaging the bench as well. Then we have a Prime Catcher. This is another big resource for any of those games, any matchups where you're not able to switch things around as much as you'd like to move your Pokemon if they're trying to trap something. Prime Catcher is a good card, along with Switch, to counter those attempts at fooling you. And you can reuse these cards, right? If you're against Snorlax, part of the game plan is basically to hold off on using these 3 cards until you have to, and then reusing them to make the best of it whenever you need them again. So we try to time our V-Star to take advantage of 2 out of these 3 cards, or sometimes even to take advantage of the Jamming Tower. So Jamming Tower is in here. It's my stadium of choice. It was Robin's stadium of choice. You've seen a lot of people playing, I'm sure, the Temple of Sinnoh to turn off Lugia's special energy, and that's great against Lugia. But that's all it's great against. That's all it is for. Jamming Tower helps in a lot of situations. Against Miraidon, you're turning off their Bravery Charms. Against Gardevoir, you're turning off Bravery Charms, which will get you an extra prize because they'll have a Bravery Charm attached to Drifloon, so it just instantly KOs itself, and then you can KO something else. But it also prevents them from being able to power up their next attacker to the maximum. If they replace a stadium, again, we can just get it right back. It also, in the Guardian matchup and other single prize matchups, is a stadium that we can use. We can play it when we want to, and then we can get it back with the Legacy Star ability. So we can get it back to replace Neutralization Zone, which otherwise is almost a game-losing card for us. And after that, we have Energy. So we play a lot. We play 7 Grass Energies. Some lists play 8, and I'm not opposed to that, but it's hard to find the space. We also play 3 Fire Energies. I've seen lists get so greedy that they only play 2, and frankly, I'd never be okay with doing that in my list. So this is the 60 that Robin Schulz played. It's the 60 I played to the Cup. I won the Cup. I lost 2 rounds, and one of them should have been a tie, and one of them probably should have been a win if I hadn't made weird misplays. So that's the truth of the matter. The Snorlax, the first loss was against Snorlax, and I V-starred into a situation that let him use Chi-Yu. If I just naturally let the game play out, I don't think we would have finished in time. Anyway, so going back to the list, like I say, I would replace Raging Bolt with Giratina V-Star. I would probably, and I want to test this further and see, but I think I replace Lumineon with Iron Leaves, because there's so many tricky things you can do out of the blue with Iron Leaves. I think I replace one or both Superior Energy Retrieval with Super Rod, and I'm not sure what I replace it with, but I want to find room for Thornton, because during the events leading up to, like, prior to Friday, Thornton was so big, so useful. It lets you set up extra Regidragos much more easily, and it can lead to, like I say, you can come in, you can use Iron Thorns to take a knockout on like a Charizard, or a lower HP Pokemon like a Lumineon or Squawkabilly or Mew. And then, there's the Claws with Iron Leaves attack, maybe you don't know, but it hits for 180 and then it can't attack again the following turn. So it's like a, okay damage attack, not great. And then you can't even attack the next turn. But what you can do is when you put into play, it summons however much energy you want to move onto it, will go onto it. And that aspect of the Iron Leaves, plus it jumping into the active, means it can be an extra switching resource against any stall deck, or just any deck that's trying to stall you out like that. And with Thornton, once it's pulled the energy on it, you can use its normal attack then, and you can turn around and turn it into a Drago that you evolve up to a V-Star the very next turn. So lots of situations that I want to use these combinations of cards, and so I'm going to try to find a way. I have a list built that I'm testing, but I want to give Lumineon a fair shake too, because it did feel powerful this weekend. So anyway, with that, I guess as an update, I've now won throughout August, adding on to what I did in July. I've now won 1 cup out of 2 cups I've been to. The other one was in July, so you heard me talk about that. I have won 1 challenge. I've gotten a 2nd place at a challenge. I've gotten 2 other top 4. So I have 4 challenge finishes, but we'll probably replace some of those throughout the season. I'm not going to focus too heavily on that. I want to get at least 4 finishes each quarter, just in case things line up with the gods and I can place in regionals in a way that actually gets me travel awards or stipends. But I'm not expecting that to happen necessarily. And yeah, with that, that's the state of my play. That's also where the lists are. And we'll go ahead. I'm going to set the cards that I say I would swap in off to the side, and we will shuffle up an example hand. And this is actually pretty close to what you'd see regardless of which list you would be playing, unless we start Raging Bolt, in which case I'm going to just ignore it and shuffle up again, because with Giratina you can't start it. 4, 5, 6, 8, 7. Proper amount of times to shuffle for true randomization is between 7 and 8. And I do actually count my shuffles when I do it in tournaments. Alrighty, so we started 2 Regidrago Vs, and we're going to pretend that we're going first, because that's what we have to do. That's what you normally want to do into most matchups, is go first. Set off our prize cards, and then we will draw for turn. Okay, so we have some grass energy already. So I'm not too worried about getting more energy just yet, but I will go ahead actually, because we're playing the Raging Bolt list, and that means that we have the energy retrievals, the superior energy retrievals. So I'm going to go ahead and discard this so that we can use a superior energy retrieval at some point in the future. So we'll get off of the earthen vessel, we will get a grass energy and a fire energy. Then we're going to look through, this is where the main things that I prize check first. I look for how many grass energies we have and how many fire energies we have. Then I'll check about each attacker and identify first our most common attackers, such as Dragapult and Kyurem, and then I'll also see if Goodra is an option, if Raging Bolt / Giratina is an option. And so like we prized Goodra, so that's worth knowing. We won't be able to rely, oh wait, no we didn't, there's Goodra, okay. So that we can rely on the Goodra damage reduction if we need it. Once I've verified that, I'll look at numbers of Ogerpons and the different draw Pokemon, as well as number of Vs and V-Stars. But as long as we have 2 Vs we can get into play, I'm mostly concerned about the number of V-Stars. Just because I want to know if I see them, do I have to hold on to them or not. We have 1 in our opening hand, and there's 1 more in deck. So if we want to get 2 into play, and not have to wait for prizes to be the reason, we definitely need to keep this hand as is, and go from there. So I pulled the energy out, and we're just going to shuffle back up. It might have also been worth counting the boss's orders that are in deck there, and looking for other important cards, depending on the matchup we're in. But again, those are matchup specific, and I don't mind waiting until like my next deck search to see about switching cards and if our ace spec is in there, the prime catcher, and to see how many boss's orders we have. I didn't count the shuffles there, we're just going to say it's enough. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach a fire energy to the active. And from there, I will just pass. And our opponent's going to do their thing. We're going to say that they're playing a deck that's not able to knock out a 220 HP Pokemon on turn 1. If they were able to, we probably would have put this energy on the bench, but there's only a few decks where we have to worry about that. So then we draw, and it's another Earthen Vessel. Alright, you don't like to do this, and there are some matchups where we just wouldn't. If we were against Snorlax, if we were against, maybe even Iron Thorn, well yeah, definitely Iron Thorns, because we wouldn't be able to do it, but there are a few other decks, like, we might just wait and just manually attach the next energy. But we have Energy Switch and Grass Energy in hand, and if we can get the right pieces in the discard, then we can attack now with whatever attack we can get to the discard. So I'm going to V-Star. The way that plays out is you discard 7 cards. There's 4, there's 3, and then you get to pick from those 7 2 cards to bring back into your hand. So what I'm seeing here is we have Iono that we can use as our supporter for turn, and we also have Ultra Ball to get a Pokemon. So I'm going to use the Ultra Ball, discard the Jamming Tower and the Earthen Vessel. We held the Jamming Tower in part for this reason, because we might have needed to get rid of it, and we did, and it wasn't important to play. And then I'm going to get the Teal Mask Ogerpon. We're going for Teal Mask over any other option because that's what we're looking at. He'll draw us cards, well, a card, and we'll be able to move the energy up and be sure that if we can get anything in the discard from Iono, then we will get an attack off. It would have been nice if we had a slightly bigger hand, so that we could have Ultra Balled something other than the Earthen Vessel away, gotten a Pokemon, and discarded it with the Earthen Vessel. But we'd still have also wanted a guaranteed way to get Ogerpon. So it probably works out to be 2 of one, half dozen of the other. Right, we Teal Dance and draw 1. And now we have Research, so probably going to play that instead of the Iono. We can switch the energy up onto our Regidrago VSTAR, and then we'll go ahead and Research, unless our opponent's hand or something about our read on them leads us to believe that we should instead Iono. So we draw 3 and 4, that makes 7, and we're off to the races. Okay, so in this hand we have 3 cards that can discard things, as well as 2 other cards that can get Pokemon and can be played to shrink the size of our hand. Those are all good things. So first things first, we want to decide who we want to attack with, and that's going to be what we get off of our first Ultra Ball. We're going to want to play at least 1 Nest Ball. We don't need to play the second Ultra Ball, but we could save a Nest Ball or an Ultra Ball if we decide we don't want to get rid of, or if we decide we don't need Radiant Charizard and can get rid of him. I'm going to pretend like we don't know that, and so we do need Radiant Charizard. So then I would Ultra Ball away, Ultra Ball and Nest Ball, and I would get our attacker of choice. It could be anybody. And, we just get whatever Pokemon we want, basically, right? So then we Earthen Vessel that Pokemon away. And we either get energy or we don't. Because what we're looking at then is we're probably going to bench the Radiant Charizard to lower our hand size. And then we're going to play Nest Ball to get Mew. So we have recurring card draw now throughout the game. But again, if we weren't using Radiant Charizard, we'd also at this point have saved a Nest Ball up here, and we'd get another Teal Mask Ogerpon, and if we were doing that, we would have gotten energies off of the Earthen Vessel so that we could dance with the Teal Mask. But again, I'm choosing the reality where we're going to use Radiant Charizard at some point in the game. So now we shuffle up, and we can restart for 2. 1 and 2. Okay, so next turn we could theoretically move an energy around if we need to, and then discard the Hisuian Goodra. We have an Ultra Ball, so we could even discard the Goodra and get either another Pokemon we need, or possibly another Pokemon to attack with, because then we'll discard everything with Research. But you can see now we successfully were able to attack with whatever attack we wanted, because we sought out the Pokemon we were attacking with an Ultra Ball and discarded it with the Vessel. So we're attacking with whatever we want now. Can board wipe. We could have gotten Kyurem to board wipe a single prize deck, or we are spreading damage counters around with the Dragapult, or even we could have Rolling Ironed to keep our Drago out of range for an Oko if that was the best play. Lots of options, and that's kind of the point of the deck, is that you can do whatever you want within reason, reasonably quickly. Without further ado, this has been Jeffrey, JJB146 Blake for Hoopa Hideout, and I will see you next time, but it may be a while. We'll see how fast I recover from surgery.